Chapter 3. 1 week later. Cassius Vieri's townhouse. The stables. Charlotte brushed Tumble's coat in long, rhythmic strokes, her mind wandering. The horse stood contentedly, occasionally flicking his tail or letting out a soft whicker of approval. It had been a week since she'd started coming to the townhouse. A week of early mornings, quiet moments with Tumble, and brief, fleeting encounters with Cassius. But lately, she hadn't seen much of him at all.
He's always busy, she thought, frowning slightly. Rehearsals, performances, meetings. I barely get a moment with him. She had come today hoping to see him, to talk with him. But the house had been quiet, and Cassius was nowhere to be found. Where is he? She wondered, her brushstrokes slowing. He said he'd be here this morning. Did he forget? Tumble nudged her shoulder. Miss Charlotte. Charlotte turned back to see Mrs. Higgins, the head housekeeper, approaching with a warm smile. Over the past week, they had become familiar with one another. Mrs. Higgins always made sure Charlotte ate, always asked if she needed anything, always treated her with genuine kindness. "You've been at it for hours," Mrs. Higgins said, shaking her head. "Come inside. You need a proper meal." Charlotte hesitated, glancing at Tumble. "I should finish."
"Nonsense." Mrs. Higgins waved her hand dismissively. "The horse will survive. You, on the other hand, look like you haven't eaten since breakfast. Come. Fine." Charlotte relented, setting down her brush and following the housekeeper. The kitchen. Mrs. Higgins guided Charlotte to a small table in the corner and set a plate of food before her.
"Eat," she commanded kindly. "You need your strength." Charlotte smiled, touched by the woman's maternal care. "Thank you, Mrs. Higgins. You're always looking after me." "That's what I do," the housekeeper said with a chuckle, settling into the chair opposite her. "I look after everyone in this house." Charlotte glanced around the kitchen. It was quieter than usual. She thought of the young maid who usually brought her water, a sweet-faced girl named Polly, who had asked endless questions about horses and seemed genuinely fascinated by Charlotte's work. "What about Polly?" Charlotte asked, frowning. "I haven't seen her all morning." Mrs. Higgins's expression softened with sadness. "Polly is gone." "Oh," Charlotte said. "Where? When will she be coming back?" Mrs. Higgins hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "I don't think so, dear. Lord Vieri gave her a month's wages and sent her off, and even the butler left. We're struggling as it is." Charlotte's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Higgins sighed heavily, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "We used to have twice as many servants, but times have been difficult. Lord Vieri does his best, but the money's been tight. Very tight." "But he's famous," Charlotte said. "He's one of the most celebrated opera singers in London." "Aye, he is," Mrs. Higgins agreed. "But fame doesn't always mean fortune. He spends what he doesn't have, gives generously to anyone who asks, friends, admirers, even strangers, buys expensive gifts for women he barely knows, throws lavish parties because he loves the attention." She shook her head. "He has a good heart, but he doesn't think about tomorrow." Charlotte absorbed this information, her mind racing. "And now, with Lord Greyhaven threatening to withdraw his support," Mrs. Higgins trailed off. "Lord Greyhaven?" Charlotte asked, her voice sharp. "The Duke?" "Yes," Mrs. Higgins said, lowering her voice further. He's been covering Lord Vieri's debts for years, paying for the opera house rentals, settling the accounts, making sure the bills get paid. But I guess he's tired of it. He told Lord Vieri to clean up his act, or he'd pull his investment entirely.
Charlotte's stomach dropped. So that's why Cassius looked so afraid when the butler announced his arrival. He's been living beyond his means, and now it's all catching up with him. Poor Polly, Charlotte murmured. She was such a sweet girl.
She adored you, Mrs. Higgins said, smiling sadly. She used to say you were the most interesting woman she'd ever met. Charlotte smiled sadly. Yeah, I'm going to miss her. Well, Mrs. Higgins said, standing and brushing off her apron, you're doing a fine job. Now, finish your food before it gets cold. Later that evening, Charlotte walked slowly through the London streets, her mind still filled with everything Mrs. Higgins had told her. Cassius was in debt. His household was barely holding together. She sighed, turned a corner, then stopped. Cassius was standing near a carriage, and beside him was a beautiful woman, dressed in the finest silks, with pretty hair and a dazzling smile. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his arm in an intimate gesture. Charlotte's heart stopped. Who is she?
Cassius laughed, his voice carrying through the evening air. My dear, you flatter me. I'm hardly worthy of such praise.
The woman leaned closer. Nonsense. You're the most talented man in London. Everyone knows it. Cassius smiled that devastating smile, the smile Charlotte knew. Charlotte stepped back into the corner, her chest tight. She hid behind a wall. So that's the kind of woman he wants, she realised. Elegant, refined, ladylike. She watched them. Cassius helped the woman into a carriage, his hand lingering, his smile warm and genuine. I guess he has someone he likes, Charlotte thought, her throat constricting. She turned away, her heart aching with a pain she hadn't expected. Why did I think this would work? Why did I think he would ever notice me? She walked home, the laughter of people echoing in her ears. I'm such a fool. 2 days later, Cassius Vieri's townhouse. Charlotte had stayed later than usual. She had finished with tumble hours ago, but servants had been rushing about frantically, trying to prepare for Cassius's big opera performance that evening. The house was in chaos, servants running everywhere, last-minute preparations, the usual disarray that seemed to follow Cassius wherever he went. Charlotte had helped. Mrs. Higgins had protested. Miss Charlotte, you've done enough. You've been here since dawn. Please, Charlotte said firmly. I can see you're tired. Just let me help. The old woman thanked her, and Charlotte helped from, folding linens, helping wherever she could. As the night settled in, the mansion became quiet. Charlotte prepared to leave. She had purchased a ticket to Cassius's performance, a seat in the upper gallery, nothing fancy, but she would be there. She would see him on stage, hear his voice, watch him shine. This week has been torture, she thought. I haven't seen him at all. But tonight I'll see him. I just have to go home and change. Then, what is the meaning of all this? A voice interrupted her thoughts. Charlotte peeked around the corner. Cassius stood in the mansion gate, his coat off, his expression one of utter disbelief. My lord, you left earlier.
so I dismissed the staff, since their work was done.
Cassius ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. I just left a few hours ago, came back to pick up something. Mrs. Higgins, and now the coachman is throwing up everywhere. Only God knows what he ate. He sighed heavily. Now you're telling me you released the servant. Good gracious, I have to be there in 20 minutes. My lord, be calm, Mrs. Higgins said, her voice soothing. I already sent Rose to get John.
John? Cassius's voice rose. John is the one who drinks on the job. He's probably at the tavern by now. Charlotte emerged from the shadows. I can help. She stepped out quietly. Both Cassius and Mrs. Higgins turned to look at her.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to know when I upload the next chapter.